The day his son was born should have been one of the happiest days of one man's life. However, when his wife experienced life-threatening complications after the birth, he was confronted with the possibility of losing her. And it was in these heartbreaking moments that the man realized his biggest regret about their relationship.
Hello, wonderful people. I'm Scott Leffler for WonderBot. And here is...
After his wife's health took a bad turn, this man shared a deep regret about his marriage.
Before we begin, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell for more amazing videos.
Humans have been getting married to each other for centuries. As a result, you'd think we'd have the whole business sussed out by now. However, given the complicated nature of matters of the heart, matrimony remains a tricky landscape for couples to navigate, and many of us face stumbling blocks. One of the first mistakes that newlyweds tend to make is believing that their marriage will be easy. More often than not, sharing your life with someone else is hard work, requiring constant reevaluation as couples ride the storms that life throws in their way. There will undeniably be dark times, but husbands and wives have to venture through them to find the light once more. In an article published on the Psychology Today website in 2016, cultural historian Dr. Stephen Mintz outlined 4 major sources of tension within modern-day marriage, as he saw them. These included the conflict between marriage's traditional insistence on commitment and modern society's obsession with self-fulfillment. Mintz argued that traditional gender roles dictated that women previously gave up their own identity for the sake of their marriage. However, with members of both sexes now free to pursue their own happiness, relationship difficulties can become much harder to resolve. As a result, people often go their separate ways to find their own fulfillment without compromise. Another source of tension within marriage, says Mintz, is the modern-day emphasis on intimacy within marriage and how that interacts with the everyday pressures of social and economic factors. People tend to think of matrimony purely as an emotional bond. However, it remains an economic union as well. So, money issues can create an unexpected wedge between couples. The third tension that Mintz lists is what he calls existential reality. According to him, this is the fact that conflicts are unavoidable in marriages, given that they're the most psychologically demanding relationships that most of us will experience. And as tensions rise, romance can fade into the background. The final source of tensions are the expectation that we put on marriage at the same time that traditional support mechanisms of the union are fading away. In the past, couples relied on help from friends and family who lived close by, but over the years, marriages have become more isolated. As a result, in his Psychology Today article, Mintz compares matrimony to a lonely life raft in a storm-tossed sea. On top of all this, some common problems facing married couples today include seeing less of each other due to work and childcare commitments. Elsewhere, even those with the best intentions struggle to share responsibilities equally, particularly when kids are involved. So even couples with the best intentions find that divisions of labor are often skewed unfavorably for women. With all the challenges facing couples, it's little wonder that many marriages end in divorce. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, America's divorce rate stands at 3.2 per 1,000 people. And while it's good that people no longer feel compelled to stay in relationships they're unhappy with, many people experience regret after a split. In 2014, the Daily Mail reported the result of a study that had found that half of divorced people had regrets over their split. Furthermore, research showed that 54% had questioned their decision in the immediate aftermath of their divorce, many of them recognizing that they still had feelings for their exes. The survey had been commissioned to coincide with the DVD release of the British comedy film The Love Punch, which starred Pierce Brosnan and Emma Thompson as divorcees. 2,000 women and men took part in the research, all of them having divorced or split from a long-term partner after 5 years together. The breakdown of any romantic relationship can lead people to wonder where it all went wrong. And some common questions newly singletons might come to ask themselves include, could I have tried harder? Did I appreciate them enough? And did I realize I had something worth holding on to? It's often said that we don't know what we've got until it's gone, and the popular phrase can sometimes be applied to failed relationships too. Sometimes it takes hindsight to appreciate what we once had. However, often a jolt of reality is all we need to see that we're actually onto a good thing. That's exactly what happened to one anonymous gentleman who shared his story with the Akar Bakar platform, which publishes people's stories in their own words. The article in question appeared on the site in 2016. However, its message no doubt still resonates with readers today. In the emotive article, the writer reveals the details of his personal life. He said, "My wife and I have known each other for over 8 years. It started off as a friendship, then love, and finally marriage. However," he added, "it seemed like we were progressing, but the sad truth was how we had slipped into a slow degeneration. There were some clear differences between the man and his wife, particularly in the way they'd communicated. Writing on a car, he explained, I've always been someone who's not socially adept and speaks less, and she's the complete opposite. As a result, things in their relationship went awry. Eventually, the man found himself drifting apart from his wife. He withdrew from their relationships, and when he wasn't at work, he was distracted by his phone or laptop. And what's worse, he didn't think that it was a problem that he was sacrificing quality time with his wife for screen time with his gadgets. The man explained, My wife would be so upset about how we had drifted apart, but I mostly dismissed it as how couples need to forget romance and be more practical as marriage progresses. However, this husband was about to have a rude awakening that would make him realize how much he'd taken his marriage for granted. In 2015, the man and his wife had relocated to the US for work. In their new country, they had no family or friends nearby. As a result, they had to rely on each other more, and as a result, they grew closer together. The man told Akar Bakar, For the first time in 8 years, I was beginning to realize how much I'd missed out on. Revealing his newfound appreciation for his wife, the anonymous writer added, I had such a wonderful partner. My best friend was at home, and I looked everywhere for emotional support when the chips were down. If I had only put that laptop or phone aside and spoken to her, I wouldn't have grayed so early. The couple's bond grew deeper still when they welcomed their first child, a boy, in 2016. Describing the birth of his son, the new dad wrote, We had a baby, a little baby boy who finally arrived in our lives after 9 long months of waiting. I was still exhilarated with the way his little hand wrapped around my finger. At that moment, the man vowed that he would make up for 7 years of neglect in his marriage. But just as he was beginning to realize how much he'd taken for granted, it looked possible that he could lose everything. He explained, That's when it struck like a lightning. Our moments of loving togetherness suddenly seemed like they would disappear forever. After the birth of their son, the man's wife developed complications in the form of a life-threatening blood disorder. Recalling the devastating moments when he realized that he might lose his wife, he wrote, I had the baby in one hand and my other hand outstretched holding my wife's. I was dumbfounded and wrecked as she was wheeled away for scans and tests. So what should have been one of the happiest days of the couple's life, the birth of their son, quickly descended into despair. And all the husband could do was put on a brave face as he waited to learn his wife's fate. He explained, My wife is my rock, but I had to stand strong without her. I had to stand strong for her. It all felt completely out of place. However, while the man was trying to remain strong for the sake of his wife, deep down he couldn't help but fear the worst for her. As he contemplated losing the mother of his child, his mind ventured to all those moments when he'd put other things before his wife, and he soon wished that he could turn back the clock. In particular, the man berated himself for spending time on his phone and laptop when he was at home with his wife when he could have focused his attention on her. Writing on Akar Bakar, he said, Thanks to my work and my gadgets, I had spared no time for my wife. It took a jolt to realize her importance in my life, a jolt that I don't even wish upon my worst enemy. The anonymous writer considered how the modern world seemed to value virtual interaction so much, sometimes at the detriment of real-life bonds. He said, We've all lived with this moronic assumption that gadgets and social media bring people closer, but I've seen it wreck face-to-face interactions, even in the most important relationship of my life. It was then that the man realized his biggest regret up until that moment was having not spent more quality time with his wife. He wrote, "I just wish I'd switched off that phone while talking to her, turned off that cricket match, not replied to that office email late at night, and listened to how her day had transpired." Seemingly reliving his marriage in his mind, the man wished he would have stayed up long enough to give her company while she cleaned up the kitchen, and held back his hunger to dine with her. Reflecting on these regrets, he asked himself, what wouldn't I do to get back every minute that I didn't spend with her? It had taken the man being faced with the possibility of losing his wife to realize what an asset she was to his life. As a result, he didn't know if he'd ever get the chance to put things right in his marriage. And this revelation must have broken his heart. In his piece for Akarbakar, he mused, "You always regret everything in hindsight." Before long, the moment of truth was upon the man. Recalling the moment he learned of his partner's fate, he wrote, "As my wife was being wheeled back into yet another room in the hospital, the doctor wore a grim expression. My face was flushed, heart thumping. The doctor told us that the situation was serious, but curable." Luckily, the man had been given a second chance, and he was convinced that he'd never take his wife for granted again. He wrote, "Relief rushed over me in a huge wave, but I was still scared. I was still bloody terrified of losing the most wonderful woman in my life. That's when I decided, I don't care what happens, I'm not letting the woman of my life go away, at any cost." The writer added, "I sat down next to my wife with tears in my eyes, and I told her, we're going to fight this out. We have to see him grow and walk into the sunset together." She'd never seen me cry, and she did now. Her eyes welled up, but she wouldn't show it. She knew it would break me. To help the man's wife get better, she had to endure a prolonged spell of painful treatment. But she had her husband by her side throughout it all. And while there was lots of sitting around to be done, he never got bored. Instead, he focused all his attention on simply being there for his wife and newborn son. Reflecting on how his wife's illness had changed him, the man told Akarbakar, "I hate it that in the past I couldn't sit for 10 minutes to talk to her. I don't think I can ever make it up to her, but I'm trying to be a better husband. I'm away from work, but it's not occupying my mind. I don't bother to check my emails." The man continued, "In the past, I wouldn't miss replying to an email. There are only two things that ring in my head right now: my wife and my kid. We haven't had the chance in the past 2 weeks to celebrate our son's arrival, but we know this too shall pass, and we'll have a long and happy life together." With that in mind, the man was convinced that the wife's illness would eventually make them stronger as a couple. And this time he was willing to put the work in to ensure that they could be there for each other, no matter what the world threw at them. He wrote, "We're taking it slow, and every day is a progress, but it's a long haul." So, while the anonymous writer didn't want to seem preachy to his readers, he hoped that some of them would reconsider how they prioritize their own lives after hearing his story. He explained, "I hope everyone understands that a WhatsApp forward can wait. An office email can wait. A cricket match can wait. Liking a photo on Facebook can wait." Giving some parting advice, the man added, "Don't let your love and loved ones wait. You never know if it's too late. Happiness is incomplete if you don't have the people to share it with. Cherish your loved ones and give them what they deserve. It's a hard lesson to learn if you take them for granted."